All right, we have been circling this block for ages, spending most of our time squinting at signs that you can barely read, and it's not because I'm bad at German, but there's just nothing here. And this is why I hate parking.
And I'm not the only one.
Katastrophe.
Also ich finde es wahnsinnig stressig.
Die Autos sollten auch aus der Innenstadt raus, aber es ist trotzdem, wenn man ein Auto braucht, sehr unpraktisch.
It takes significantly longer to find a spot in Vienna than in other Austrian cities. I was searching for what felt like an entire afternoon.
This is actually worse than trying to find a spot in Manhattan. It's impossible.
And yet, for some reason, Vienna has decided the solution is to cut down on parking spots even more. How could that possibly fix the problem? We might not think much about parking outside of the infuriating moments we can't find a spot, but it's actually a big part of urban life.
Okay, nope, that's closed.
Most US cities dedicate at least 25% of their developable land to parking spots. Some, like Las Vegas, use a third of their city space just for parking. And from London to Frankfurt, drivers spend multiple days each year just looking for spots. And as we've seen, finding a spot in Vienna is a major pain. We eventually find somewhere to park, just in time to meet someone whose job is to change this.
When I have to go by car because I have to transport something, I get nervous. I don't like it at all.
Ina Hohlmeier works for the city and is helping overhaul Austria's capital, with parking a big part of that job. You might think it's an easy fix, just add more parking spots. But it's a bit more complicated than that. Adding more parking creates a kind of strange feedback loop. The more lots you build, the more people will go by car and use them, which makes it tougher to find a spot, and then we're back to building even more lots. Access to a parking spot can make you up to twice as likely to own a car. Plus, zoning laws often require a certain number of new spots for every new building. And that makes parking everyone's problem.
People are suffering. When you see here, this is a very dense area. Many people live here. It's a heat island.
Covering large swathes of cities in asphalt means they absorb heat, which can make life unbearable in the summer, while also contributing to floods by impeding water drainage during storms.
The most important part when we think about the impact on the environment is that providing all this free parking is an enormous subsidy for car ownership.
Henry Grabar wrote the literal book on parking's hidden costs.
If we begin to think of that as a subsidy for driving and what it might look like to provide an equivalent subsidy for transit or for biking or for walking, suddenly I think the real environmental costs of parking come into sharper relief.
Which begs another question. What should we be doing with all this highly valuable land instead? Vienna's super blocks are a shot at answering it. The local authorities marked off 15 blocks where they restrict most car traffic, expanded bike lanes, and removed parking spots. They're also planting trees and bushes and adding places to meet and rest, to break up the monotony and add a bit of color to one of the city's most densely populated neighborhoods.
It's a population which really needs green spaces, and this is what we can offer when we get the cars out.
Yeah.
And when we can make plant new trees where we can offer them seating possibilities.
And it is impressive. I mean, walking outside of the block, you do immediately notice once you get into it how much greener it is and how much quieter it is already off the main street.
Ina cites a survey suggesting nearly 70% of residents are in favor of fewer parking and more green spaces, but there are still a lot of people to be won over.
We have to take them on board. We have to ask them, how do you like your neighborhood? Yeah, these are the possibilities. You can have it like this, a lot of cars, no trees, or you can have it differently.
And changes don't have to be as drastic as the superblocks.
You can find converted parking spaces all over the city, from individual spots to whole streets and squares.
The city has 350 projects focused on converting asphalt into green and public spaces, which includes removing a lot of parking. A prominent example is the downtown Neuer Markt, which used to be covered in parking and is now loaded with greenery and seating. Parking spots have also been reborn as outdoor seating for restaurants or as cycling infrastructure. Like here, where 140 spots made way for 1.3 kilometers of bike lanes and trees. And thanks to the city's Neighborhood Oasis project, if you get enough local support, you can petition the local government to convert individual parking spots in your area. As you can see, they've been popping up all over town. And there's another big change. No more free parking anywhere. In 2022, Vienna introduced a citywide parking management system, meaning all street parking is subject to payment, and for non-residents to a 2-hour limit. This approach is catching on elsewhere too. Cities are realizing that they're not getting their money's worth for the huge chunks of central real estate allocated to parking.
There's some incentive there to think about, like, how can we generate revenue from this, private use of public space.
Dana Yanoka is an expert on global mobility for the Institute for Transportation and Development Policy.
There are a lot of cities that are starting to realize the opportunity that parking offers.
In Vienna's case, expanding paid parking zones has started bringing in around 180 million euros annually, which the city is putting into cycling lanes. And people knowing where their parking fees end up boosts support for the scheme. Another way cities are trying to reclaim space from cars is to change regulations that mean a certain number of parking spots have to be added with new construction.
Eliminating parking minimums is a budget neutral policy. You don't have to spend any money to do that. And you can start to influence the way that the land is being used.
All of these shifts have seen Vienna's use of street parking and cars go down 37% overall since the 90s. Plenty of cities are taking similar action to Vienna. Paris has called for eliminating 60,000 parking spots, while local governments from New York to London have experimented with making pandemic-era pop-up seating permanent. But understandably, many cities worry about backlash from drivers.
For people who drive, and many of us have no choice but to drive, that's considered an attack on their livelihoods, on the way they get around.
Like in Car Crazy America, where 92% of households own at least one car. There, car owners are an important political and social group swaying local politics and city planning. That's not the case everywhere. Dana's organization does a lot of work in the global south, where far fewer people own cars.
The majority of people are walking and taking public transport. And so allocating resources and space to this small minority of people who drive is pretty unpopular.
But wherever you are, charging for parking and eliminating spaces to coax people away from cars only works if people actually have an alternative. So finding street parking here is admittedly a bit of a nightmare, and it's obviously annoying to drivers that they've got to hunt for ages and that they have to pay for parking. But thankfully, to make that all a bit smoother, there are places like this parking rod where we're headed now to ease the pain. Vienna's set up a number of park and rides for commuters, large parking garages with cheap all-day parking and a connection to buses and trains, which are thankfully affordable, well-connected, and quick.
I mean, this is obviously pretty convenient. Unfortunately, I can't blast Taylor Swift as loudly as I would in the car, but besides that, you have everything you need.
As long as people can still get around, they're unlikely to shed too many tears over lost parking lots, especially when the areas that replace them are actually nice to spend time in. Our cities are still covered in parking spots. Even Vienna has over 480,000 left, so they're full of potential bike lanes, seating areas, and mini gardens.
Streets are essentially one of the most valuable assets that cities have, and the vast majority of that space is being allocated to vehicle throughput and storage, so driving and parking, with a small share of that going to things like dedicated busways, dedicated bike lanes, and other public infrastructure.
Fewer parking spots means fewer cars and helping climate-proof cities with cooling green spaces and more porous surfaces to fight flooding. But it's not as simple as just turning parking lots into parks.
You cannot reduce anything without offering a good alternative.
Looks like Vienna is doing a pretty good job of upgrading where we keep our cars into areas we actually want to spend time. What's your city doing to cut down on parking? Thanks a lot for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.